find that the sow scud dubbing in green is just the best stuff. I have substituted with many colors over the years of this fly, and this seems to be the fishiest. So I take some dubbing out, and I apply this fairly liberally. If I was tying a small dry fly, I might use very little and be very careful about how I put it on. I don't worry about it with this fly. I just need a bunch. We're trying to make the front of the body of this needs to be fairly fat, and so again, you can see my dubbing's not wrapped on perfectly by any means, but it doesn't seem to matter so much as it does with, say, a smaller, more detailed fly. And I'll put it on about 6 inches, and this is just going to be the dubbing for the head. And then I wrap it all in the area in the front, and then I begin to figure 8 wrap it around the eyes, and just save enough for just a couple wraps behind the eyes. So the next thing I'm going to do is prepare my claws. I like to use gold variant rabbit, and the first thing I like to do is color the underside of it orange with a marker. After I've done that and clipped 2 pieces off, I end up with my 2 claws. It looks something like this. I start with the claw nearest me and attach that just behind the eye. And I like to wrap that thread up so it's very close to the eye. What that really does is it helps allow the fur to spread out and give you a real good silhouette. And when I'm done with that, I do the other side. Wrap it in just the same way. And I have my claws attached. So the next thing I like to do here is create my head, or finish my head I should say, by wrapping my thin skin over. And I'll just give it just a couple wraps, maybe 2 or 3 wraps, right up tight to the eyes. I'll pull that out of the way, and now I'm ready to finish the body. There will be a few things I need to add to the fly at this point. One is a rib. I like to use medium size ultra wire. Any black wire will do. I prefer to use black. And I take a short length of that, maybe 6-inch length, and I wrap that in, attach that. And I leave it off to the side for later. The next thing I like to use is saddle hackle from a chicken in natural brown. And as you pick your feathers out, I like to use a piece with a nice big taper. This will give me a nice taper to my legs at the end of the pattern. I'm not real, I don't measure this as much as I would say other flies. I just like to find a nice taper. And I'll get rid of the excess feathers that I don't need here. So I end up with something like this. I'll attach this, and I'm attaching it at the wide end of the feather. And again, I'll leave that until I'm done with the fly here. So the next step is to get some more of that sow scud dubbing. And again, I'm going to liberally apply it to my thread. As with the head, I don't like to waste a lot of time getting this just perfect. I just need to add some. I'm trying to add a little bulk to my body to give it a nice crawdad silhouette. I might add about 7 or 8 inches here for the body. I like to wrap it on. The first few wraps I like to get it up close here so there's not a gap down here without dubbing. And once I've done that, just that move gives me a nice natural taper. Once I've done that, I wrap it all the way back to the end of the hook. Now I'm ready to wrap my hackle forward. This will represent the legs of the crayfish. And tie this off with a few wraps and clip the excess. If you've got a nice webby feather like this, it's kind of nice to tease it out here a little bit. And then another thing I like to do is clip off the very top part, because I can end up with a little too much of this stuff. And I'm being careful not to clip my thin skin or anything else. Just clipping off the top part a little bit. So, next thing I need to do is pull my rib out of the way a little bit and wrap the thin skin back to create my shell back. Once again, just a few wraps here should do the trick. And now I'm ready to wrap my rib forward. I found that if you wiggle the rib, it prevents you from actually mashing down on your legs. And I'll show you what I mean here. Just give it a little wiggle as you're wrapping it forward. This gives the body a nice segmentation, a nice crayfish look. And I go about a half a dozen times, all the way to the back of the fly. Tie off my rib with about 4 or 5 wraps and clip the excess. And right here, I like to kind of tease the legs out just a little bit. As you can see, we got some nice claw and leg looking features to the fly that really give it a realistic look. The next thing I need to do is use my whip finisher and go around about 4 times. 1, 2, 3, 4. That fly is finished. Just about finished, I should say. A few little details I like to add at the end here. I have a nice little shell, kind of a crawdad shell that goes over my hook eye there. That's looking a little long, so I may clip it. And then if you really want to go crazy, you can clip the corners a little and give it kind of a natural look. And the last thing I do with this fly is I take a brown marker and I like to model up the leather on the underside of my claws here. Again, we used orange in the beginning. I'm going to take brown. If you can notice there's white edges around, first thing I do is run that around the edges. This just gives it a nice, natural model look. And then I just put a little bit of that on the underside of the leather, like so. So it looks something like that. And as the very last step, a little head cement to make sure that this fly does not come undone. But I found that if you tie the fly properly, it's a nice durable pattern. And your finished dead drift crayfish. I like to fish this fly in August. In the Truckee River, our crayfish tend to molt in August. With a lack of the summer bugs as they're finishing their hatches, and the brown trout in particular getting aggressive, looking forward to their spawning cycle, they really do tune into the crayfish. I fish it on a dead drift, generally under an indicator with some weight, and I often use a dropper. And I think if you plug away at pocket water and deeper water, and big fish looking water, you'll find some success with this fly. Fish it deep, right on the bottom. Don't be afraid to lose a few. You will catch more fish. Hope you've enjoyed the dead drift crawfish.